Did you get to the concert?
I saw it last night.
Well, let's see. Did you know? Had you heard it be played in New York or America or California?
Never, no.
Oh, so it was the first time for you?
It's the first time. Although I do have the soundtrack record and the photographer as well, which I have listened to at home.
How'd you like the band live?
It was fantastic.
They're good, aren't they?
Fantastic. Oh my God, I couldn't believe it.
Good musicians.
You know what? It sounds rather silly, but one thing that kept on impressing me was the gentleman on the left, Michael Reisman.
Michael Reisman, yeah.
That guy must have fingers of iron because he just keeps.
I know, he's terrific. Yeah,
he's
our conductor.
Was that right?
Well, I mean, because the bass line is what you hear.
Yeah.
So the bass line keeps everything together. So the bass line has to be solid.
And he just kept it up, without ever missing a beat.
He's been playing with me for 10 years.
Was it right?
But most of the band's been with me a long time. Is this thing on?
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most of the band's been with me for a long time. We began in 1968, and actually all the wind players have been with me practically from the beginning, and Kurt, the sound man.
Right.
Michael's from 74 or 75. And the singers, then the other keyboard players knew because I needed another, the music just expanded and I needed another keyboard player. But it's good.
How did you arrive at that sort of a setup? You have three synthesizer players, three horn players and a vocalist.
The way the band began really, when I began, the people who began playing with me were my friends. And most of us were keyboard players, so voila, keyboards. And that meant that that we had to amplify because to rehearse we couldn't find a place that had three pianos. So we began using portable pianos. That meant we had to mix. And then John Gibson and he and another saxophone player began playing with us. So we began to mic them so that could balance with the keyboards. Otherwise you couldn't balance. They had to be all one or the other. So the original group was three keyboard players and two wind players. And then we added a singer. About 1972 we added a singer. Joan LaBarbera, who's also been working as a composer in recent years. And then the only real change has been in last year I added another keyboard player. Because with a photographer and those things that have all the brass parts in it, since I can't travel with the brass section, what I did is I got a synthesizer that covers all the brass parts.
What about when you first started playing with these people? I assume that you are basically responsible for all the compositions.
I am entirely responsible. I write all the music, and it's all notated music. So I write the pieces, then we have to sit down and rehearse them. And then, but see, the pieces we played last night, we do about 40, 50 concerts a year. So, like that dance from Einstein on the Beach, which is a very tricky piece. I suppose we performed that over 120 times.
Is that right? Well, that ending there, when the whole band in unison just goes up and down on like 16th notes.
Yeah, that's quite an ending,
Yeah.
But part of the reason that we can play so well together is that we played, each of those pieces have been played a lot of times. Like this is the last week of a 4-week tour. We did 3 weeks in Europe. So we did about 12 concerts there. So, and then and the same program we played on an American tour last spring. The repertory goes back from 1969, and what we do, all the pieces on this tour have been since 76, but I often pick pieces from 70 and 73, 74. So it's like a living repertory that I've written the music for. And I for a tour we'll make up a program that I work so closely with Michael and Kurt now that we usually get together and we talk about, well, what pieces shall we do? And well, we decided to do the Einstein dance this time because we hadn't played it for about 3 years. And we had been playing other pieces, and then what happens is you just get tired of playing the same pieces. So also I write new pieces. So between writing new pieces and having a kind of a 14 or 15 year repertory, that gives us enough music. But usually we pick one program for a tour, and we just play the shit out of it for a month.
How did you end up with this lineup of songs for the Japanese tour?
There's some practical things too. CBS Sony is here.
Yeah.
And we wanted to play, and almost all the music...
The Dance of the Fairies.
I see. Almost everything actually we're playing on this tour is on record right now. And So we've been cooperating with the record companies because it's been good for us to do that. But also for the Japanese, see, this is really the tour we also did in Europe. There are pieces that we hadn't. The other thing that's important when we go back to a city is important for us to play. I'd say 40 to 60% new music, or a program new to them. So actually the fact is that we had been in London last exactly a year ago, and we had a different line of pieces. So we did 2 concerts in London. We set a program that was different from our last London program. So that turns out to be the program we're playing here. We actually could play a completely different program tonight, but tomorrow. But we have it in our fingers. But I guess, I don't know, we decided, we didn't know whether to do, as a matter of fact, we were discussing whether to do 3 different programs in Tokyo or the same program 3 times, and in the end, the sponsors said that there would be different audiences. And actually it's easier to do the same program because people don't forget what pieces they're going to do next. Or they just have their music out. And also, for the soundtracks are very complicated. And once we set the levels for one program, it's not so hard to completely redo it. If we change the program, it sounds like New York. So there are some practical reasons for doing it that way. I don't know if I really answered the question. Mostly it has to do with the fact that, the last tour we played on other pieces from Einstein. We played another work called Dance from another large scale piece. And we just got tired of playing that music. I also think that the way we're doing the program now, see, this is an audience that we know never heard the music live. So the question, how to do it? Well, we thought, we start with this flow, which kind of ease them into the music in a way. Though in Europe, no, we did it differently. In Europe, we started off with the Einstein dance because they knew the music, and what we did is we hit them with a real big piece at the beginning and figured, well, the people that don't like it will leave right away, and the rest will stay. But we didn't want to take. In Japan, we didn't know, so we thought we start with a shorter piece, and then build up to the more longer pieces.
Just for the record here, according to this, it's flow, but it wasn't flow in the concert last night.
We started with flow.
We started with flow.
Yeah, we did.
What was that?
We did flow first, and then we did the first dance from Einstein on the beach, and we ended the first half with Kainascasi.
I could have sworn in the second half you introduced the second song as flow.
Maybe I said it wrong.
Was that one with just the synthesizer backing and the soprano sax?
Yeah, I probably mispronounced it.
Because I remember you said flow and I remarked it.
No, it was in fact...
Was that Facades?
That was Rubric and Facades from the Glassworks record.
Okay, then this is correct then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't realize I said that wrong.
So there is quite a gap in the, say, how well people are familiar with you in Japan and in Europe.
Well, this is Japan's completely new for us. I've been playing in Europe since 1970, and in fact, many people that come to the audience concerts are new. Like this time around in Germany, many people were hearing the music live for the first time, and that still happens a lot. But with Japan, it's absolutely new. So I didn't know. It's hard to know what to do. I mean,
it must have been quite a shock last night for the first song when nobody clapped.
We were prepared for that.
Oh, you were?
Someone told us that was very likely to happen because they said that in the classical concerts, audiences applaud at the very end of the concert. And we didn't know what kind of audience we'd get. But I sensed the audience changing from the beginning of the concert to the end of the concert. People were already more acclimatized to the music.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. I was too. I didn't know whether to clap or not the first time.
No one did. So we were prepared for that, and whatever happened was okay for us. The thing is that my feeling is I have a lot of confidence in this ensemble. I think they play extraordinarily well, and that and the music is at a very good stage. The music's very together right now. So my feeling is that. If our audiences will stay through a concert, we'll begin to build an audience in Japan. And I have a lot of confidence in where we are right now, and where from what I see of the society, my God, it looks like it's a super modern society. I mean, this is like New York or something. So I figure that it's got to fit in here. It's got to work in Japan. I don't know. That's my feeling.
It was full last night.
Yeah, and I think that we'll get a. And then the CBS people told me they've been doing good record sales here. I think that of all the non-Western countries, this is the place, obviously, that we could have an audience.
What other countries do you have your main followings in?
You know, in a funny way, the main one has been in Holland.
Is that right?
Yeah, because the Dutch have, for the last 10 years, every major work of mine has been played in Holland, and I've become a regular visitor. About every year, a new work gets done in Holland. They just look. It's one of those societies where the arts are heavily supported by the government, and they. I don't know. It's probably a handful of people who help make those decisions. And anyway, the opera about Gandhi was commissioned there. Ice on the Beach was played there. Every major work has been played in Holland. So that the secret for us is to go back year after year after year, and that's true in America. It's true everywhere. If we can go back every year to a city, in 3 or 4 years we build an audience. I know how long it takes now because I've been doing it so long. But in Los Angeles, for example, or let's see, where did we do this recently? Washington was interesting. Washington, D.C., we began to play, we targeted Washington. It's very, so I have a booking people that work with me and I have management people. So we plan these things. It's not done haphazard at all. We figured, okay, we're going to do Washington. So we began going there every year, and for over 3 years, and the first audience was like 600, the first was about 400, then 600, then 800, and now we get about 1,000 in Washington. It's very, absolutely predictable.
Are some places more receptive than others, and other places
No,
not receptive
it used
at
to
all?
be that way, but it's becoming very evened out now.
So you can pretty much go anywhere, and if you plan it right, you
That's
won't
right.
have any
That's
problem
right.
cracking the market.
That's right, but it takes us, Boston, we did that with Boston also. Oddly enough, though it's so close to New York, we hadn't played there that much. Then we began going up there, I think in '79, and now we go every year, and now there's very good audiences in Boston. It used not to be so predictable. When the band began in '68, from '68 to '75 about, it was very small audiences and very chancy. And depending on who invited you and whether artists came or musicians came or because when the audience was that small, it's very critical. Because if you have an audience of 200, then it depends. Then it makes a great deal of difference who that audience is. But when the audience is 1,200 or 1,000, it doesn't matter. It all evens out.
One thing that's always interested me is how people see you. There's this sort of, I think, a myth, or you might say a legend, that accompanies you and your music.
What is that?
No, this music that's absolutely brimming with intellectual and cultural quality. And if you go, if you listen to it or go see it, it's going to rub off on you.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You never felt that.
Well, you know, a lot of the funny thing about this is that you never hear them yourself. I was the last person to find out how well known the group was. I mean, for years, the person in the middle is the last person to know.
Yeah.
You don't find out because I'm gone before it's. I mean, I'll be gone on Tuesday, and whatever the reaction is here, it'll take me years to catch up for it to catch up with me. I didn't. In fact, I get, in terms of America and Europe, what we call the establishment or the traditional or academic new music scene is so different, and they give me so much shit all the time that we get just the opposite. We hear that the music is completely primitive, or it's too simple, or this is from people who teach music, you know, the people who get Guggenheim grants and people who get Pulitzer prizes, and who belong to the National Institute of Arts and Letters. Those things, that they really look down on this.
Is that right? Huh. It seems to be the opposite here. I mean, that's among the average person, though.
No, that's a very small group of people, and in fact, they have no constituency. So, in a certain point, it doesn't matter at all what they think. In fact, it's like what Verdi said: no one likes it but the public. I mean, you know. So, in a way, my constituency isn't that establishment. A lot of it is other composers my age or other artists my age. There is a community of people in the theater and in dance and in music, of all kinds of music, that I am close to. And then there's now a general audience that's grown up around that. But it began really began as a small kind of a small downtown scene.
Hmm.
You know, we used to play. I used to play every Sunday afternoon in my loft. For who? And we just had we literally had a hat at the door. We did that for all through the early 70s. You could come and pay $1 if you were willing to walk up 7 flights of stairs. You know, and that's the way it was for a long time.
What kind of people are coming to see you now? I would imagine it's quite a
It's a big
variety.
range.
Yeah.
It's a lot of young people now, and middle-aged kind of people. Here, I was told it was a mixture of classical music people and pop music people.
Yeah.
That's generally speaking. That's generally true. Though in Europe, it's more young people now. It's getting audiences. We're getting older, and they're getting younger.
What do you think people are bringing? What do you think is bringing people to your concerts?
Well, yeah, I think the big thing is that the expectations of music listeners is extremely different than it was 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and people have a much broader idea of. They have their loyalties are less defined than they used to be. I mean, I can remember, and I'm sure you can too, even maybe younger than me, but there was a time when you had people who only went to jazz concerts, or they only went to heavy metal, or they only went to string quartets, and now people go to much bigger variety of things. The audiences have changed more rapidly in the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 years than the music has changed. So that's what's happened is that you're having, it's interesting, the music evolved very rapidly at a certain point, and now we're at a period where the audience is evolving very rapidly. I don't know what I don't really exactly know what that is. I mean, these are sociological things, and I'm not really sure what the reasons are, but I know it's happening, and you can see it, anyone can see it if you look at the audience.
I found the music, listening to it live, very uplifting, and I would imagine that the responses from like Americans like myself are kind of the same way, and you probably get a pretty lively audience in the States there.
Yeah, I like that. Well, to me, that the music does favor that, doesn't it? I guess what the intention of the music in a way is to give you a real good hit.
Yeah, it did.
You know, and that's what I bring to the music, and in that way it's very simple. I mean, the intention of the music in terms of the audience is very direct. And it's not, it's something, I really think that, for me, that's what I want a concert to do. I want people to go out of a concert feeling very up, very energized, and very, that's what I go to music for. And that's what maybe that's just my personal feeling.
You talked about there being the bass synthesizer like being the core of the music on stage. How does the music on stage differ from that of the record? I mean, in terms
well,
of
it's done very differently, of course. The records are not, for me, the record is not a photograph of a piece. That's a traditional way of doing it. Where if you were a composer and you did a symphony, you simply put up a mic and you did it. We don't do it that way. For us, well, I've been lucky. I've been working with Kurt Casey and Mike Wilson for a long time. And we approach records as if it's a different medium entirely. And what we think of it this way: the record is what you listen to at home in your living room. It comes out of speakers, and the recording is a kind of an illusion in a way. And we use whatever we need to create the most impactful illusion that we can. There are a lot of tricks in making records that we learn, but the record is not supposed to represent a lot of music. And that's why, in a way, it's so important for the music for us to come and play too. To me, they're like different hands. One is the left hand and the right hand, or it's different modes or different ways of experiencing. And it's much more different than, let's say, the difference between movies and TV. I think they complement each other. I think that after a concert, the record. I mean, the record is not supposed to sound like the concert, but it's something that we make tapes of concerts all the time, and I can hear those. But if I really want to hear the piece, I listen to the record. You know, because the record is how I can listen to it in my home and in another situation. The live concerts, they're okay. I mean, they're okay in one way, but what you get in a record is you get the opportunity to do something in an almost perfect way. but it's not the perfection, but it's that by doing it that way, you can, the impact of the live concert, you can't duplicate on the record. But what you can get an impact of a different kind. You get the impact through a discrete layering of the parts, so that every part becomes completely clear. We can do that to an extent in a live performance. The music is very clear, but it's on the record it's really clear. And if you have a good sound system, and Glassworks now they're putting it on a compact disc. It'll be it should be really stunning on the record. So when we go in to do a record, we actually approach the music all over again. We take it apart and put it back together in a completely different way.
The stage was very low key last night.
Yeah, we don't have much of a stage show, do we?
Yeah, I mean your stage demeanor was minimal, I guess you might say.
Yeah,
have you ever thought of experimenting with sort of a visual side?
Not really. For me, the focus is always on the music. Actually, last night it was even looked better than usual because we had that beautiful blue backdrop.
Yeah.
But we have no stage. We have almost. I mean, I think there's some presence there, but there's no stage show at all. In a way, one of the interesting things about the audience, many of the young people come are much more used to a stage show. You know, someone who comes to hear us because they like, say, the Talking Heads or David Bowie, that kind of audience. We don't give them that at all. And what's interesting to me is that they're willing to put up with this. Because really, when you see us playing, then it's obvious that it's concert music. This music that doesn't, where the hit of the real hits off the music. And there's no, we don't give you. It's tough in a way, isn't it? Because it doesn't give the audience anything else. You really have to get into the music, or that's it. But I mean, I don't know. It's never been my desire to do it in any other way, and if I did, I wouldn't know what to do.
Well, what fascinated me was I've listened to the records quite a few times at home. I put them on when I'm writing or working or something, and
it's good for washing dishes.
So what's surprising?
It's very good for. It's good for long car rides. You can't do that so much in Japan.
No,
well, you know, there's enormous distances like driving from Chicago to Minneapolis. You know, it's terrific traveling music.
Well, what amazes me is like when you just sit there and watch it and just concentrate on it, it's like a story unfolding. And the subtle changes in the music also make a whole lot of sense. Whereas when I listen to the record, it's almost in one ear and out the other.
Well, that's generally speaking for records. I mean, that's true for Beethoven too. I mean, to listen to a Beethoven string quartet at home on a record player is hard to do. That's why we go to concerts in a way. I think because we address music in a much higher level at a concert. But I mean, that's true. What you're saying is exactly true for Beethoven or Berlioz or Chopin. Music tends to become ambient music at home. I rarely, unless there's a specific thing on the radio that I'll know that there's a concert of such and such music and I'll listen to it. I find that at home I tend to walk around, I make telephone calls.
Do everything but listen to the music?
Yeah. It's there, and in a way but it's really at a concert that you can, in a way maybe that's why our concerts are so concentrated visually. It's really, we reduce everything to the music in a way. And I think it's hard. I mean, I'm pleased that the audiences can do it.
Why do you have a mixer sitting right in the middle of the stage?
Because we have to talk to him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You see, there are two mixers. There's two guys that work for us. There's another guy in the hall. Did you see that?
The guy sitting right in the middle with the big...
See, the hardest thing about this music and performing it is the monitoring. In other words, what each person is listening to as they're playing becomes extremely crucial in terms of how well they play. And all through the concert, the monitors are changing depending on what's going on in the music. And if you heard us a lot, you'd find out that we're actually talking to Kurt all the time.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't notice that at all.
Sometimes, no, you won't. It's very, very subtle. I mean, I'll be playing and I'll look at Kurt, and if I'm playing and I'm not hearing myself, I'll look at Kurt and I'll look down. It'll just be like that. And then he'll look at me and look down, and he'll maybe do something like that, and that'll means I've already got you already up on the monitor. And then I'll say, then I'll look like that, which means, well, how come it isn't coming out of the side film? And he'll say, It is coming out of the saxophone.
The art of tacit communication.
Well, we've been playing. I think I've done 400 concerts with Kurt.
Is that right?
At least. We do 40, 50 concerts a year. Dora is always talking to Kurt.
Huh.
And she's much more demonstrative. She'll go like this. You didn't see that? She'll go. She's actually doing it a lot. Now, if Kurt was out in the hall, we couldn't do it. So now, then the problem is, if Kurt's sitting there, then he's there to communicate to us, but there has to also be someone in the hall setting the general level of the hall, because he can't be both places. So now, it's only really in the last 2 years that we could afford to have a second sound man. So he is out in the hall, and he has a graphic equalizer and a volume control, because no matter how well we set the level at the sound check, as soon as the audience comes in, it's different. Depending on how the hall is, it'll depend on how different that might be. So Dan is in the hall. It used to be that Dan used to go up. He used to have to go up to the stage and change the amplifier levels and stuff, but now we have him with cables out in the hall too. So now I know that the sound in the room is okay because Dan's there. Before that, I couldn't be exactly sure. We'd set the level in the afternoon, then I would go out and hear it in the afternoon. But then during the concert, the whole thing can get screwed around. Like put 1,000 people in the room and it changes the acoustics entirely. But now we've got Dan there, so I think we're pretty well covered. We've got Dan in the hall, we've got Kurt on the stage, and but this has been a long evolution. I mean, I tell you that when the band first began playing in 1968. The way we used to do it, I used to play with there was another keyboard player, and we would be playing, and he would decide the levels were wrong, so he would actually stop playing, get up, and go and adjust all the levels, he would sit down. Then when the saxophone player said that was all wrong, so he would get up, while we're playing, and he would go and change it. Then so this would be this constant charade of people changing the levels, and finally we got, by 1970, we got one guy to sit there and do it for us. But then the technique of monitoring evolved, and then at the stage we are now, we've pretty well figured it out. But it took a long time because we had no models for this. This kind of amplified music, which is so intricate, it's really like chamber music. It's like a string quartet, only loud. But that kind of playing, there weren't any models for it, so we've had to evolve this technique ourselves. And we're in pretty good shape right now.
Another thing I was wondering, how do you write? How do you compose? What starts?
The old way, pencil and paper. It's the best way. It's the quickest. It's interesting. Finally, pencil and paper is the quickest way to write music. I have friends who work with multi-track machines and do this and that. It takes them much, much longer just to cue up, to lay down the first track and put on the second track. And by the time they've done that, I'm already into page 20. But I'm lucky that I have a very traditional background. This is the good thing about that kind of training is that I have a lot of friends who very successful musicians who can't read and write music. And that's a terrible limitation in a certain way. Especially, my music is all notated classical. I mean, it's notated in a traditional way. I mean, I use a slightly different notation, but basically it's all notated. And I just write music, I think, from that point of view, if you were actually watching me work, it would not look very different from the way anyone else would. I'm sitting either at my kitchen table, or sometimes I start at the piano, and I develop ideas of the piano, then I'll move everything over to the kitchen table, which is where I've been working lately. And I'll sit there, and it just looks like I'm writing. It's
most of these songs seem to be based on a repeating pattern or segment. And
that's right. It's repetitive structures.
Right, repetitive structures. And first of all, you develop that, and then work from there?
Yeah. In a way, I don't work with themes in the traditional way, but in another way, it's not that different, in that the material that you start with is the most important thing. The harmonic or rhythmic or melodic material, that's the kernel of the piece. That's the most crucial thing. After that, it's all skill.
What knocked me out last night was that song "Facades."
They play that so beautiful, don't they?
It's the soprano sax trade-off. Did you first of all have that in mind to be played by?
Well, actually, what happened? That's interesting. I wrote that for one player. Actually, that was written for Glassworks was written as a record, and then I later adapted it for performance, so it's backwards in a way. Jack played it on the record, but then John is an equally good player, and John said, look, I'd like to play it too. So then we would have to, so then they used to alternate nights. But then the problem with that was is that then they could decide on which night who would play what piece. For example, let's say one night we played in Paris, but the next night we played in Bordeaux, which is a much smaller place. And if Jack played in Paris, then John would say, well, I don't want to play in Bordeaux, I want to play in Vienna where there are more people. So then we finally evolved, then they kind of this brilliant idea, well, we'll both play it. So then they evolved, they turned the piece into a duet, which, and they decided to do that, and it became a very interesting piece.
It's on record, it's not a duet like
no,
that. That's a shame. That's a shame.
Well, that only happened this year, and it became out of the kind of competitive spirit of the players. And now when they play, each one tries to play more beautifully than the other. So the level gets higher and higher.
Yeah.
And so one plays one phrase, it's maybe only 2 notes, and the other one has to play the same phrase. And I know that they're trying to cut each other. But the result is, of course, is that each line becomes so close. And now we've been playing it this way for about a month, so about 16, 17 performances, and they're really getting into it now.
It's amazing, because if you close your eyes, it almost sounds like 2 string instruments playing. It just seems to go beyond the sound of the sax.
Sometimes the end of one phrase will be the beginning of the other phrase, and the intonation is so close that you actually can't hear them changing. Sometimes if one is a little even one or 2 beats away, then you can hear the difference. We set the A at around 442 now.
What's that?
We set the pitch A at 442 per minute.
Right. Yeah.
But there are heated discussions in the band whether we should set it at 440 or 441. Believe me, this sounds like there's some people in the band that are so particular about the pitch that, in fact, we finally decided to set it at 442 after terrific discussions that went on for months. And it was going from 4. And I thought, these guys are nuts. But they're completely into intonation, so that then when they're playing together, if you come to hear us in the dressing room before we play, they have a meter that measures the pitch. And in the first 15 minutes before we're playing, they're actually tuning their instruments to that meter. It's incredible. And then when they get out and play, they can become so close. If they're exactly on the same pitch, you can't hear the change. Actually, last night I could hear, as a matter of fact. They were 1 beat off, and I heard a little beat in the change. But to tell you the truth, I don't think anyone can hear that.
Yeah.
You got to be completely nuts to go into that.
Are they all former Juilliard alumni?
No, not really. Jack has a very classical background. I met Jack in Paris. He had a Fulbright to study saxophone, and he won a big saxophone competition. I think it was the Geneva saxophone competition. He went all over Europe playing concertos. John was working in, as a matter of fact, John was in Berkeley. And worked with a new music group there. His background is more a tradition of improvised and experimental music. Richard Peck, the alto and tenor player, is great rock and roll background.
Is that right?
He's from Louisiana. They played in all those Cajun. He played in Cajun bands. But he has a special kind of hard tone that fits well with his music.
One last technical question: what does an emulator do?
Oh, emulator is a cute instrument. What the emulator does, it samples real sounds and records them on a floppy disk, and then you put the floppy disk in the emulator, and if you play 3, or if you sing 3 notes, it extrapolates from that the whole range of the instrument, and it comes up on the keyboard.
Right.
And we use that for the chorus.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering why she was singing, the whole chorus was coming out.
Yeah, she was playing the choral parts with her left hand.
Oh, I see.
And singing with it, and we found that if you add one voice to an emulator chorus, which is actually her voice too, it creates an illusion of a chorus. And I was listening to the tape today of the concert last night, and it sounds very much like a real chorus.
Oh,
it's a very good illusion.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, well, I think we've run out of time and tape.
Okay.
Thank you. I think she wants to get a couple of pictures here. Look,